This episode is brought to you by Monkey Nutrition. Let's get into this.
Sure.
Basic tenets of the Zeitgeist Movement for someone on the street in London that doesn't know what it is. What would you tell them?
I would say that it's based on systems theory. I'm jumping to a more advanced stage because I think you know the principles. Well, you said the basic individual, but I think systems theory is what underlies it all. And here's the punchline. If we get away from this detached and anarchistic market system where everyone fights for resources and fights for their ability to create, and they work through this strata of interaction where no one's really listening to each other, everyone's trying to one each other up, they're hiding information. If we get rid of all of that and think about the world as one system, one architecture, one synergistic whole, and actually think about industry the same way, meaning, for example, universal standardization of all components for a given good genre. A car. I think in the future, cars will be phased out for the majority with mass transit if we were to go down sustainable paths. But let's just assume that we have the system we have now. We need a bunch of cars. There are thousands of varieties of parts for any given car. You have to go to different companies and different locations to order parts. I'm sure if you drive, you have the same problem if anything goes out in your car. The mechanic says, we got to order it from BMW and wherever, in Switzerland or whatever. If you standardize an automobile, which as its basic function is very simple and you can make it extremely efficient and updatable, and it doesn't need to have the variety that's been generated through competition, then you'd have one car, you'd have an amazing amount of resources to fix that car all over the world, very inexpensively because all of those component parts can be mass-produced with high efficiency because of what the nature of large-scale production means. It means cost and resource energy goes down. That's why things get cheaper when in investment, when they finally get it past the prototype stage and they mass-produce, And once you do that, you have a system that's actually recognizing that particular item across the entire world, meaning that there's no waste anymore because everyone's using the same basic system. Now, people hear that and they think, oh, well, that means everything's standardized. I'm going to have the same thing as everybody else. Soviet communism, they think things like that.
Right.
Not necessarily.
Because the knee-jerk capitalists are quickly to group you in as a
necessarily.
communist.
With new advancements in 3D printing and the way you can build facades of cars, everyone could have their own facade. You can make your own idealized facade very easily, customizable with big, uniform, standardized 3D printing machines.
Right. I mean, you're talking about system standardized protocols. It sounds a lot like the web. It sounds a lot like other major developments we've had. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Computers are the worst. Computers have all sorts of components across all the manufacturers that are non-standardized. Film, I do film stuff. It drives me crazy when I go into a film shop. There are so many little parts and gadgets and adapters that are made in proprietary manners that are a complete waste of resources and time and energy. If you did that, systems thinking, you create a larger architecture, you create a holistic view of the entire architecture of society, and you work on that level. And once you do that, I'd say exponential increase of efficiency, I would say more thousands and thousands and thousands of times of efficiency increase would exist to meet the needs of the human population and beyond if we did that.
Okay. And what does that mean for the human population? We become happier, we become healthier?
If you remove, that's another level. If you were to get rid of the labor for income system, which is on its way out anyway due to technological unemployment, we have
us being replaced by machines.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Now, it's also a social imperative to replace people with machines now because of the ability to create an abundance. That's how it's actually happening. So the fact that we preserve human labor in the wake of these advents of replacing humans with machines, which do not need vacations, do not need all the things that make us human, that require us to continue our health, also removing all the dangers and everything else. Machines can run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, especially if you really optimize the production and you use these standardized protocols I just mentioned. You really thought about it holistically, so you don't have to worry about all these different parts. I mean, the reason manufacturing fails today, even in the automation sector, is, again, because nothing's standardized. And that's a big part of it. You elevate human society to a new level. So you create this industrial level where we can do it, statistically proven, it's in that book, where we can automate the majority of everything that we need to elevate society out of this epic period of our history where we have done nothing but try and survive through labor and income.
Okay, so no more worker bees, and we all become creative.
We become creative.
Creative, okay.
There's a great book. People talk about incentive a lot, and they think that if you don't have the drive of money, or competition that you won't have incentive.
And you've quoted Daniel Pink before. We've had him on the show.
Oh, you have, good.
Fascinating what he says is that one of his tenets or one of his observations is once people make enough money to be comfortable, that added extra compensation does not make them.
Yep.
Matter of fact, I think he argues it makes them less.
Exactly. And the more you get, the more property you get, the more you're basically kind of owned, the more requirements you have, the more you need to sustain that level. And that's a cultural neuroses too, with built-in status and advertising. It's unfortunate. People think that they need to get more and more and more stuff. I envision a world where people have everything accessible within their community and they rent it, so to speak, even though it's not rental in the sense of currency.
Right.
And you live in a clean, mobile world. Just imagine not having, I'm moving right now into a space where I'm building out a soundstage, and I'm looking at all my stuff. I'm like, God, I can't believe I have all of
Even
this
you
stuff.
have too much stuff.
But it's the stuff I need. It's
Right.
but I have film equipment. I'm a production guy.
Right.
And I can't rent this stuff because over the long haul, it's too expensive. You need to buy it and invest in it and then resell it. And that's how you sustain yourself when you buy anything, any expensive equipment. I envision a world eventually where people actually marvel and they want no stuff. Right. They have access to it all.
I think most people these days would admit that we do have this neuroses when it comes to the Western world with acquiring things and acquiring jets. And I mean, don't get me started if you watch a music video of what's important in this world. But I think even most people, you could sit them down and say, yeah, this has gone way too far. Yeah. And why not pool some of these resources and own less? There's these clubs in New York City where people try to own 100 things and, Fight Club, the things you own end up owning you. I mean, I think as humans, we're starting to agree that there is a problem.
It's completely an unsustainable value system.
I mean, do you have a hard time even getting people to admit, do most people admit, yeah, Peter, yes, we do have an issue here when it comes to our purest form of capitalism in the world?
I think, again, it's hard to say.
Okay.
Not most people, I don't think. Again, it's a status association driven by a consumer culture. Remember, in the early 20th century, a mechanization, the Industrial Revolution happened, the late Industrial Revolution, and mechanization came in, Great Depression hit, and everyone blamed mechanization. And it was partly true, but it was also the massive economic decline that happened because of the banks and fraudulent banking behavior. But it was all inherent to capitalism, and people, the theorists out there in advertising, people like Edward Bernays, they said we need a consumption society. We don't need people to think in this early American puritanical is the wrong word, but it was conservative. Early America did not have a status-driven need for property. It was more of a Christian, simplistic. Puritanical is the wrong word. There's another word I could use. I can't remember what it is, but you get the point.
Yes.
That value had to be created. And because what is our society? What is our economy? We have laborers, we have consumers, and we have employers. And money has to constantly move. It's like a gas pedal on a car. This is economic growth. This is 5% unemployment. This is 10% unemployment.
Less money changing hands, right?
So what is causing this? Buying and selling and creating and using resources and wasting energy and materials nonsensically just to keep the machine going. So with that, advertising came forward, and it's huge. As I said earlier, advertising is the biggest expense for most corporations now because it's really about social manipulation at this point. People have, in a lot of ways, especially in Western society, what they need. I would say there's a little bit of an argument to that, but they have the ability to get what they need, but they want more and more and more because that is what the culture has taught them. And it's required. It's required. If we didn't have that value, the entire economy would collapse.
Right. I think the perfect example of that is De Beers and the diamond will last forever. Yeah. And I'm sure you know that story. And I think most people don't even know that 120 years ago, diamonds weren't even used for wedding rings. And it was this entire demand that was created by the De Beers Mining Company, where they taught everyone that you need to spend 2 weeks of your salary to put a rock on someone's finger. There's no secondary market. You never sell your ring. Yep. Perfect. Yep. I mean,
and in the meantime, De Beers has been found historically to actually burn their diamonds in the background years ago because they wanted to maintain artificial scarcity.
Right.
So if you have too many diamonds, the price value drops.
This week on London Real, we're taking you back to our 2012 interview with futurist Jacques Fresco.
We must eventually design a language that's not subject to interpretation. Whenever you talk to people, you think you're talking to people. It goes in their ear and comes out in relation to their background. They don't hear exactly what you say. There is no way you can think outside of your culture.